So we were talking about the drug discovery and its role of network pharmacology in this. Before understanding that, we have to understand that in the drug discovery, the pharmaceutical scientists are doing two things. One is they're trying to identify a disease target, and secondly, they're trying to design appropriate molecules to fit in those targets and have amelioration of the diseases. So in this case, pharmacology has given an idea of receptor. The receptor concept came very early, and that idea was you can say landmark for modern drug discovery because this idea stimulated the process of understanding biological control and health diseases in health and disease. As we know that earlier we were giving the plants and those plants were used you can say randomly with the phenotypic screening only that they are useful in a particular disease and we were dependent on those plants only. But later on we try to find out that these plants are having some molecules, some bioactive molecules. These molecules are going to act on typical type of receptors and then they are showing us a response. So once we had that information with us, and with that information we have tried to derive new molecules. These new molecules will be similar to those molecules which we were getting in the fight as a bioactive. And lock and key. In this, we have found that there was a concept of lock and key. And this concept of lock and key, receptor we know is lock and the key is the ligand. So when we have, we know usually that when we have a right key for a right lock, then we can open that lock. Similar things happen in case of drug effect. If we have a right ligand for a right receptor, then we can have the opening of that receptor or binding to that receptor and then physiological change which is required to cure the disease. This job of medicinal chemist was like a job of locksmith, as we know that a locksmith can make a duplicate key for safekeeping or he or she can make a key for a lock where all the original keys have been lost. So we are doing both the things. Most of the time we are having some keys to the locks or the receptors. Then we say we are having ligand-based drug designing. And if we do not have that, then we have structure-based drug designing on the basis of the lock. So both the things are done by locksmith also. So the similarity of drug discovery based on these two approaches is the job of locksmith. As the locksmith is making duplicate keys, he's trying to make, you see, different type of dentate are there, different color combinations we are using. So these are like different function group we are using on the pharmacophore, and we are using different type of attachments to that pharmacophore, and then we're trying to make a new key or new drug, and that should fit into the lock or receptor, and this is how we are doing it. But you see, these are different building blocks we can have. Based on that, we can have generation of library of the molecules, and out of those library of molecules, we can fit some of them into the receptor exactly. So that particular combination becomes the right key for that right lock. So you can have both hit and trial as well as rational approach. I told you, if you are knowing a particular key, if you are having a key and trying to make a duplicate key, then it will be a rational approach. If you do not have a key, then it will be hit and trial approach. So both the things are happening. So as we are accumulating more and more knowledge, as we have seen the last decade, last year of drug discovery, we were having a lot of information about the structure of keys. We had developed a QSAR method for different type of pharmacophores, and based on that, quickly we can design new molecules which can fit to those known receptors with some different physiochemical and physiological properties. So this approach has suffered limited success because of, as I told you, finity of synthetic molecular diversity. We cannot think of many molecules in one go. Okay, we can have a limit to it. Like if I give you a pharmacophore, how many changes you can make in that pharmacophore will depend on definitely on your creativity, and that is the limited you can say changes you can make. So that limitation is there with this particular approach, and then this left many receptors orphaned, thus some diseases too, because we were only trying to copy some of the known drug molecules or known keys for the locks, and majority of the new drugs which were discovered that were already targeting already known proteins or already targeted proteins, and they were having similar structure also to the known drugs. So they were Me Too type of drugs, they were called. So this resulted in slow rate of target innovation. We were not able to innovate new targets. No doubt there was target innovation, but it was very, very slow. We were not having new targets. If you talk about post-genome, human genome era, we started understanding that there are genes which are functioning for particular say, process in the body, and based on the human genome map, we have identified a disease and druggable genome. Okay, for particular disease genes, we are having about 3,000 products, and only 260 to 400 drugs are approved for that. And in principle, if you see, only few are druggable from these particular genes, because most of the genes may be, you can say, transcripting for nucleic acids, polysaccharides, lipids, and proteins. First three were not targeted because of the toxicity, specificity, and difficulty in creating potent inhibitors, and these eliminate these first three categories for drug targetings. Proteins are most probably the best targets which we are using for targeting new molecules. So this is druggable proteome then. Pharmaceutical druggable proteome, you can say, is a door, and door is the protein, and the binding site. Binding site is the lock in that, you can say, door, and then the drugs, they are keys. So if you see, this is the relationship of protein interaction with the keys or the drugs, and these proteins are druggable or not, that will again depend on the pockets it is having and the information we are having about these pockets or the structure of these targets. Now coming to the next point, where I'm trying to emphasize the distribution of drugs and drug targets. In the first slide, you'll see the number of targets, and the second slide, you'll see the number of drugs on the x-axis. And this is the count on the y-axis. The first one, the count of y-axis is number of targets for a drug. And in the modern drug discovery, we have tried to find more and more specific drugs for a target. And this specificity resulted in maximum number of molecules discovered for a single target, or 2 or 3 targets. If you see, in the first one, most of the molecules, if you see, the maximum number of count of the drugs is for their action on primary single target. And if this number you see, this is decreasing. Okay, this is decreasing as we go from more and more number of targets and number of drugs in that category. The same is this graph depicting number of drugs here and how many targets are they having. You see that this is the single target is there. A number of drugs who are targeting more and more targets is less, and the count is, you can say, more. So this shows polypharmacology approach was reduced in this era, and we were having an approach to have a single target or mono-target approach. So this affected one more thing. This one more thing is that if you see, this is the timeline, and this is the count of drugs. Okay, count of targets. These are the old proteins. Yellow ones are old proteins, and the red ones are new proteins. So you see, as we were talking about the innovation, target innovation was very slow in this era. And then talking to the second figure, we were having 2 types of drugs. One is jumping drugs, other is crawling drugs. So coming to jumping drugs. Jumping drugs are those drugs which are new, first in class. They are having new mechanism, they are having new targets. And crawling drugs are those which are having known targets. Okay. Now if you see this graph, you will clearly understand that the jumping drugs are very few, and only there were more and more of crawling drugs. With the passage of time, we were having more and more of crawling drugs. So if you see, the FDA approves 19.4 new chemical entities on average each year in the last 25 years, and of which only 6.3 act on novel targets. Only 25% innovation is there for the new targets. So this showed a concept that targets remain unexplored because when they're out of sight, they're locked tight. So we cannot see those targets, so we cannot explore drugs for these targets. So we have to explore those targets to be to design the new first-in-class drugs, which pharmaceutical industry is now very, very much interested in. Limited success is further, you see, 200 experimental drugs are there and 1014 human drug target proteins with the addition of experimental drugs are there. This to reverse the approach. So understanding and revealing new locks and then designing keys. That was the new approach. So we can probe new trends of drug development by looking at changes in drug target network with the addition of experimental drugs. So the motivation for this approach will be, the truth is we know very little about how the major drugs we take work. So that means the reasoning is receptors and mechanisms are unknown to us. We know even less about what side effects they might have. This is again because of the poor knowledge about the receptors and mechanisms they may be interacting. Drug discovery seems to have moved into omics era. The system this was the reason because they have to pay insurance bills of those patients who had cardiac comorbidities with this drug and fatalities also. So they have to pay for that. So this cost is increased to 5 billion. You see, the fatal diseases are neglected because they do not make money. So there must be workable business for that, business model for this too, so that those receptors can be also be explored, which are orphan receptors and which are solving orphan diseases. So what is the success story? The success story is that if we go for principle of reverse pharmacology, it remains valid for years. As a result of its use, roughly 50 to 60 receptors have been de-orphanized in the last 5 years. For the first time, the information is available for all members of SAV1 transmembrane receptor family, which is a big family in most of the drugs. For let's say 70% of the drug will be interacting with this type of receptor. So there is no reliable estimate of number of remaining orphan SAV1 transmembrane receptors, which we can use for discovery of new drugs, which can be targeted for ameliorating the new diseases or the diseases which we are having. So, however, not all of the proposed orphan SAV1 transmembrane receptors will be relevant in the process of drug development, but few can be useful for that because druggability of each receptor is not possible. So we have to see number of things, number of factors decide druggability of that receptor. So today the pharmacological significance of the receptors and their proposed ligands is used to identify tomorrow's drug target. So this is very, very important to know that what is the pharmacological significance of receptors. That is why the research is more on to find new receptors. This is the concept which we were working on for the modern drug discovery from last many years. One disease, one target, one drug. Okay. So traditionally, predominant paradigm in the drug discovery was that provided researcher with the focus to identify one specific disease target. For example, if we have to get inflammation, we are talking about COX receptors, or COX inhibitors we are talking about. So to identify one specific disease target and specific molecules merely to avoid unwanted side effects for further preclinical and clinical development. This was the idea. And this is how we were making more and more new modern medicines. However, only few of the new drug candidates are being translated into effective therapies that highlighted limited effectiveness of this approach. If you see, this is the data. The clinical iteration is high, financial loss is there, does not sufficiently predictive to have this approach. These are trials undergoing. And these are the failed in trials, and these are the approved treatments. If you see, this is, as you know, if you start with 100 molecules, we'll be reaching with one molecule maybe at the end of the day, which will be approved for the clinical use. So the limitation of this approach is that many single gene knockout exhibit no effect on phenotype. So we cannot say that one protein or one target can be usually effective in multi-targeted or multi-genomic diseases. So one single gene, when it is knockout, there is no effect on phenotype, there is no disease. Isolated deletion of two individual genes exhibit no effect on phenotype. Again, proving that single gene may not be important. There can be a combination of two genes, synergy of two genes, which may be controlling a process. And if it is that, then we have to delete both the genes. So when we have deleted both the genes, there was lethal and deleterious effects. So this shows that single gene or single target is not important. We have to go for system biology. We have to go for not you can say single target approach. We have to go for system biology approach. So even selectively, if we have designed the drug to interact with a single receptor, you see with multiple targets, it interacts with multiple targets rather than one identified disease targets within the biological system. This led to side effects. Okay, so that means designing a molecule, it may not be interacting with single target, it may be interacting with multiple targets. So if we can design a molecule, it should interact with the desired targets, multiple targets, then it will be a wonderful molecule. So this is multi-targeted approach is now based on just shifted our view, our focus to network pharmacology rather than the single target pharmacology. So the system biology, in the system biology, we are trying to understand interacting partners for a disease protein within the biological system that may reveal us a novel drug target. So if we can hit 2 or 3 targets, we can do it better. And network pharmacology, we can go for new use of existing drugs, and combination therapy we can provide a better way, or we can even reveal the mechanism of certain drugs which are not system that may reveal target therapies. So, but now I'm trying to emphasize that we should shift to system biology approach and network pharmacology approach. Few targets, a better management of diseases. So, in this era, we know that there's a lot of data available to us. So now we are having big data approaches nowadays. So what is big data approach is that? Big data means, here I like to tell a story. We are using Lipinski's rule of 5. And this Lipinski's rule of 5 is very, very important if we talk about bioavailability of new molecules and other things. Any of you who knows how this was discovered? It's a very interesting story of using the big data or using the data and then you can say deconvoluting that data and finding out some principles. So the Lipinski, who was working Pfizer at the time of retirement, what he found that I should know how many of my molecules have been transformed into drug and how many of them failed. We tried to analyze that data, and after that data, what he found that there was certain pattern of the molecules which were successful, and there were certain those parameters are missing in the failed molecules. So he tried to collect that data and tried to generalize that data. Based on that generalization, we made 4 rules. And those 4 rules are very, very useful nowadays, which are known as Lipinski rule of 5. So if we understand how to collect the data, how to analyze the data, we can do wonderful things, we can find new information. So system biology and network pharmacology are integrated with bioinformatics. That is all about, bioinformatics is all about collection of biological data, storage of biological data, organization of biological data, retrieval of this biological data as and when required, then manipulation of this biological data, and modeling of this biological data for visualization, analysis, and predictions using different algorithms and softwares. So this is what we are doing in the case of network pharmacology and system biology approach by using bioinformatics nowadays. So integrating all the components, may offer hope for improving early drug discovery to address how and where in a disease network one target inhibits or activates the disease phenotype. This ideally leads to therapies that are less vulnerable to treatment failure, and this is hope, and lesser side effects by means of attacking disease network at system level through synergistic interactions and to decrease high failure rates in the clinical trials, thus decreasing the cost of drug discovery. So these will be the steps which we'll be following with the use of bioinformatics in drug discovery. These are general steps which we do. The genotype phenotype association we have to understand because we'll be starting with the genes. Post-genome era, we are talking about genes now. So then gene ontology and enrichment analysis, protein-protein interactions. Genes will be making a transform to proteins. How these proteins are interacting. We have to understand that, and we have to see that interaction network. And then we can analyze this PPI network, and then we can have the validation of those proteins which are suggested by this network analysis for validation in vitro, in vivo, and we can have drug or new use of existing drug with the help of this approach. So now coming to how we are doing it. So, first thing first, that first step one is we have to have a list of genes which are affecting that particular disease, which are associated with that disease. So we can have two steps, step 1A and step 1B. In step 1A, what we are talking is we have to understand what is the disease and what are the genes associated. In step 2, we can extend this list of genes if we know what are the targets of known drugs for that particular disease. So we can have a comprehensive list of genes based on that. Now coming to the next step, these are the different databases which you can use online free to find the genes associated with the disease. DiseaseNet, Proteome, Disease Connect, Diseases, Open, Gene Cards. Any of these you can use. We are showing you how to use DiseaseNet in this particular presentation because it will be too long if I'll be trying to tell you everything. So in the DiseaseNet, this is the website, how it will look like. Once you will go there, you will go to the search criteria. And here you can put the name of the disease which you want to search. I'm working in the area of epilepsy, so I'll put epilepsy. So then I'll find to see, search to see what are the genes associated with the disease. So there will be like different type of information related to genes available with the in relation to epilepsy. So for example, if I see what are the top 10 genes, I'll get a list of these genes with us to be being downloaded, and I can store it in a file. But these are the genes related to the epilepsy. And then in the second step, step 1B, I'll go for finding the additional genes which are associated with the disease, whereby we can find the target of the drugs available to these diseases. We can use these different, again, services, drug bank, super target, CAML. So this can tell us about the drug targets which are available to us. So we'll demonstrate it.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yeah, Akanksha has spoken. Just wait, hold on.
Okay, okay, ma'am.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Only we can try by keeping your video off. Maybe there won't be any disturbance.
I can do it. No issue.
If you can just off from your side, sir. Yeah.
So, is it clear?
Yes, sir. It's clear and audible also.
Where should I move now? Back to EasyNet?
You were giving the demonstration, sir, of this
EasyNet?
net. Yeah.
Okay. So, we were here, I think, or still earlier?
Yeah, you
Okay.
were open that. Here on this slide we were.
Okay. So, uh, I'm sorry for the disconnections in between. It's not in my control. So, DisneyNet, as we can see, this is the website. When we go to DisneyNet, and we can go to search window, and we can put the name of disease there. Based on that, we can have the list of genes which are associated with epilepsy. If you will say epilepsy, a different type of epilepsy, it will be suggesting you. You can find which type of epilepsy you are working. So you can have the association of genes with this disease, and this list you can download and store in a file. Then second step is we can extend this list of genes if we know what are the targets of the known drugs. So these are the three different databases from where you can find this: DrugBank, SuperTarget, Campbell. You can use any of these. We are demonstrating DrugBank. So if you go to DrugBank, you'll find that there is a search window again. You can put the name of drug. Now I've been putting valproic acid. This is most commonly used drug for the epilepsy. It is having multiple targets. So let us see if we can have what are the targets it has. So if you see, there are about 7 targets which are added by this approach, and these genes we are also adding to the earlier obtained list from DisneyNet, and this list is extended. So we will be having this list of genes with us. Now the second step is we should understand what is the role of these genes and what is the ontology and how they are enriched in different pathways. So for this, we can have different web services like David, BioGPS, Gene Ontology, KET. You can use any of these again, but we are going to demonstrate you with the David. So David is database for annotation, visualization, and integrated discovery. So this is particularly useful for understanding what is the gene function and what are the pathways in which these genes are involved. Okay, so let's see how to do with this. We can start analysis, and here the list which we have made in the first step, we can put that list here. We can paste that list, and then we can see this is the ensemble gene ID. You're going to say which ID. Gene ID, so we have selected this, and then you can have summation of this gene list. So this software, this web service converts your genes into a particular form, and then from there it will be using. So we are submitting this gene to conversion tool. Once it is asking us to convert all, so we are having 22 gene list. We say convert all. So once it is converted, now you can submit the converted list to David. So we are submitting it. So okay, so now we are coming for the next step where we have to select the species. So these genes we have selected from humans, Homo sapiens. So we are selecting the Homo sapiens. Second thing we have to do is we have to select the background. So background is also Homo sapiens. If you are using it for rats, mice, dogs, you can change the species, and you can see that the analysis should be based on that particular species. So once we do this, We have successfully submitted the gene list. Now we'll be asking him to analyze this data. The analysis of this data is available to us. Now, you see, we are having one disease, epilepsy. These are the functional categories we have selected. This is the gene ontology, gene general annotations, pathways we have seen. You can see the tissue expression as well. We see how it happens. If you see the pathways, there are different web services which are showing the pathways. Biocarta, BBID, EC number, KEGG pathway, Reactome pathways. So we usually go for KEGG pathways. So this is the list of pathways in which these genes are available. Now you see the number here, 8, 7, 6, 6, 5 in decreasing order. So maximum number of genes were there in the inflammatory mediator regulation of TRP channels. Like 8 genes are there, which are involved in there. So this shows that this pathway is more important to us if we have to go further for targeting the disease. Then whenever you click on a pathway, you'll find that pathway. The detailed pathway will be visible to you. Not in this detailed pathway, you will have your seed genes. We say them seed genes, which we have selected. Blue colored genes are there. So these genes are which we have selected. Now you can see their interaction with the other proteins. So these genes definitely will be transformed to proteins. So these proteins are interacting with the other proteins in the pathway. So this is all the importance of these genes is for us. Then next thing we can see is tissue expression. You can see there are different say in web services which can show you tissue expression. So this is how you can see in the brain, epithelium, platelet, hippocampus, and fetal brain. So these genes are expressing more in these areas. This is what we want. In case of epilepsy, they are supposed to act in these areas only. So that means the gene selection is appropriate. The next thing what we have to do is we have to find how the proteins which are made from these genes are interacting with each other. So in this case also, we are having different web services: INACT, STRING, STITCH, BioGrid. Okay, you can use any of these to find how these proteins are interacting with each other. So if we go for INACT, because we are using most of the time this one. So INACT is, this is the website of INACT. Now here in this term, we can paste the list of genes. Okay, so these genes will be automatically transformed into protein ID, and those will be useful for protein interaction. We can submit this. So once we'll submit this, you see our query has resulted in 4866 interactions of these proteins. We have submitted only 22 genes, 22 proteins in that way. So your query also matches 9 biological complexes in INACT. Your query also matches this much interaction, evidence from 12 other databases. So this is the information, you can say, amount of information which you can generate from this 22 genes. So once we have this, we can go for, we can download this information because we have to view that interaction also. So XGMML is the website, you can say, a format which you can see in the Cytoscape, which is a visualization format. So we can see this. So we can download it. So once it is downloaded, you can visualize this in the Cytoscape. Cytoscape is another web application which you can download freely and you can use it. So in this Cytoscape, we can open the import it, and this is how we can see the internet network. And from the network, you can see, you can visualize, you can say, magnify that, and you can see different type of interaction depending on the protein you are having in that internet. So again, these are different type of protein-protein interaction databases which you can use. HPrint, String, IID, HIPPY, IPID. So all of them are having some, you can say, advantages and disadvantages. So you have to check out that and which one is better. You can, for your application, you can select on that. So now coming to next step. This step is once we have the protein-protein interaction network, which we have seen, which we have visualized. Next is we have to analyze that network. So to analyze this network, there are different algorithms available. Plethora of algorithms are there. So I'm just going to demonstrate you one of the recent one, which is used by a study DIAMOND algorithm. Disease module detection algorithm it is called. So you can find this information online. You can download from the GitHub the codes for the source code for this particular what we say application algorithm. And then you have seed genes. Seed genes are those genes which we have selected earlier, 22 genes. And then this PPI text is protein interaction text, where we will be having interactome. So there are websites from where, like I've shown you the databases, where from you can download the PPI interactions, the total interactome available for human beings. So once we have these two things, we have to go to Python, because it's a Python code, and we can write this code, and we can give the address to, we say, different files in this code is that you have to give. Based on that, it will be analyzing the nearest most multiple targets which are available, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It will be ranking the targets like that. One will be the most closest to the seed genes and can be most effective for taking care of disease or ameliorating the disease. So in addition to that, I'll try to give you two case studies which we have done based on that. One is transforming big data into the most suitable drug targets for the vascular dementia. This is based on, you can say, two approaches: combined network pharmacology and virtual reverse pharmacology, which we have used for identification of vascular dementia. This has already been published in scientific reports. You can see this is freely available. And this was the approach in this. We have used network pharmacology both, which we have talked about just now, whereby we were extracting the drug bank, Campbell, or you can say proteome, DistriNet, or diseases to extract genes and drug targets. And then these genes were combined. And once these are combined, then we are using DAVID and GC or CAG pathways, and then proteome. Or these things we are getting 15 biological processes, 20 CAG pathways, or 50 diseases. So now these were added, and based on that, we have selected these genes, and we have selected for diamond network analysis. And we have found that there was about 600 new genes which were identified by this particular diamond algorithm. And RAD module were having now a total of 722 genes, because 122 we have already added to it. So these total genes, they were you can say virtually screened with the reverse pharmacology approach, whereby we have selected the plants which are useful for their disease from the Ayush database. And these plants were, you can say, we have extracted the phytochemical and medical information from that. And PubChem was used to extract the chemical structures of these. And then we have used another, you can say, web service, that's PASS. This prediction of activity spectra of substances, which were talking about of the total 1972 phytomolecules which we have selected from these medicine plants, how they are useful to interact with these genes. And ultimately, we have found that it was only 10 targets. We have shortlisted this to 10 targets. It's a long story, I'm cutting short because of time, shortage of time. So we cut to 10 targets. So these 10 targets were validated, and they were, you can say, with the help of Signor, we have found the downstream signaling for those, and these were validated in the pharmacological studies by us. So those were also published. In the second case study, we have used this approach to find novel interventions in the animal model to make it to have it a better translatability value. Translation value of that animal model is important. You know, if we are using animal model, if the findings of that animal model are not there, then we can think of new tools, new, you can say, interventions which should be made in the animal models to model the disease. If we have this information, then we can have a better animal model. So again, the same approach is used, whereby we are trying to find the information about genes and then extract the gene information from targets which are used by existing drugs for that disease. Then we can find the common targets among that, and then out of this, we can see how many proteins are associated with this. And then those proteins were used by diamond algorithms and gene ontology or DAVID to find the selected disease target. which can be added, it can be induced in the animals, and then we can have the, like for example, this one we were using for drug-resistant epilepsy. We are trying to find how we can induce a drug-resistant epilepsy because the existing models are not resistant to all panel of drugs which is available. So for that, we have made this approach, and we are about to publish the next study, which is based on this abstract which I have shown to you for finding new, for designing new animal models for the diseases. So we have to acknowledge the collaborators, like in the past we have used from these collaborators, and PharmaXpert is another web service which they are providing to us. Network pharmacology experiment, you can say, studies were also connected with the help of these two collaborators. They are from Institute of Biomedical Chemistry, Moscow. I have innovation projects with these guys, and we have completed the studies on these projects. So thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, sir.
Things because of the shortage of time. So I hope I was not too fast.
Not at all.
Please, we can have the question answer. You can say.
Yes. Thank you, sir. You have really explained us right from the basics till the demonstration part about the lock and key strategies, how to identify the targets, knowing the pharmacological significance of receptors and their proposed drugs who can bind to these receptors. And even you have given a very nice demonstration. You have shared with us various sites where we can access this data, and very nice concept which you have told us is a integration of the reverse pharmacology, virtual reverse pharmacology with the network pharmacology. And rather than going for a mono target and a single drug approach, we can go for a multiple target drug approach, because that will help us to to get a control over the entire pathophysiology of a disease, and maybe in that process we can come across the novel targets also. So that was a very good takeaway from your session, and now the session is open for the question answer. I will just go through the chat box if there are any questions posted. There is a question by Hina Bhojwani that can we create separate text files based on different signal transduction pathways from literature, and then use these tools for understanding where one or more signaling molecules overlap?
So this is an interesting question. What you can do is you have not to even bother for creating the pathways in the text file. You can have pathways. CAG pathways, CAG is a web service where you can find all the pathways which you can think of. Just think of, and Signor is another application which I have told at the last end of it. Signor, if you are having the target and the ligand for a particular receptor, it will show how the downstream signaling can happen. And if you don't want to, you can say, intervene at the surface with the receptor, you can go into cell and cytosolic space where you can intervene the enzymatic reactions. So that is another target which you can find without interacting with the receptor. Because the receptor, you know, is having different legs, downstream signaling legs. So those legs can give you side effects. So you can find a specific leg where you want to stop the signaling, and that enzyme or that protein can be a target. That can be a novel target. So this is easily you can do. That is possible. And in Signor, we can have the graph printed on the text as a text file. There's no problem. You can save it, and you can use it as in your thesis everywhere. You can use that text file.
Thank you, sir. There is another question by Shweta Mishra. She's saying that the session is very informative, and she just want to know that for working on diamond algorithm, is that mandatory to know Python programming part?
Yes. You have to take help of some, you can say, computer literate fellow. In your institution, you will find people around. I am also a pharmacologist. I'm not a computer literate fellow, but I've tried to learn something, and I'm always taking help of the computer people for this purpose. So it's a bioinformatics, we have to have the IT people with us. We cannot go alone because at some of the other point we stuck with the things. So they come to help us and they'll teach us how to do it. Code is available online, but if you do not know how to use Python, then definitely you have to take help of some computer savvy guy, anyone who is doing this.
Yeah, surely, even I agree with you, sir. It's a time for the collaboration of multidisciplinary research.
Yes, sure.
This
You have
point
to.
was highlighted yesterday also by many international speakers.
By
Going
just
ahead,
our classical pharmacology, we cannot, you can say, succeed now. We have to move out of our shell. We have to interact with people. Now, we are talking about big data. Big data, we pharmacologists are not using big data. We have to start using big data. Because we have to reduce the experimentation. That is another pressure on us. For example, we have to reduce the animal experimentation. Then we have to have some rational, we have to have some theoretical, you can say, exercise which can reduce our level. So that is what we are doing.
yes, sir, very true. I totally agree with you on this point. There is another post by Dr. Vandana Panda. She is a faculty of our college. She's saying it's a wonderful talk. You mentioned gene ontology. Can you elaborate a bit on this?
Gene ontology is basically gene function. Okay, gene location, where it is going to function. Okay, for example, if you go for gene ontology analysis, you will find three terms which are common: Go BP, Go CC, okay, Go MF. Go BP is Go gene ontology biological process, in which biological process gene is involved. Then GOMF is Go molecular function, which molecular function it is performing. Okay, like what is going to be transformed in an enzyme, in a receptor, in an ion channel, whatever it is. Then OCC is cellular component, in which cell component it will be expressed. So these are the you can say details of gene ontology, which you will find from that analysis.
Thank you, sir. There is another question posted by our own faculty, Dr. Meena Kanyalkar, that the softwares, sir, you have mentioned are commercial. Means she's asking, are they commercial softwares? Maybe are they free or commercial?
Web services. That is why I'm presenting it here. They are totally free. You can use them. Some of them are databases. Some of them are web services. So yes, you just need internet, not a very high configuration. You can say on your laptop. You can use it freely from internet. You submit the data. Internet connection is required. That's the only thing.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. I'll just go through. There are
Dr. Mrinal, you are having my email also. You can share my email to the participants if they want to ask anything later also. There is no issue related to this talk, what I am talking about.
yes, sir. Surely I will. Those who are interested to interact with you, I
And
will
one
share.
thing I would like to add that I am also partly Maharashtrian, you know.
Okay, this we were not knowing.
Yeah, I did my graduation from Maharashtra, Pusat, IOP Pusat, if you know.
Okay. Nice to know, sir.
Yeah. So I was there for 5 years in Maharashtra.
Okay. So there, it's very nice to know that. Sir, there is one more question posted by Balaji Deshmukh, sir, that can we predict percentage of preclinical study success when we targeted for particular gene database?
This exercise definitely increases preclinical success. Increases preclinical success. If we are having, like for that, you have to go for molecular modeling and docking. That has to be added to this. But that I have not mentioned. I have just mentioned network pharmacology only, because that is also ultimately a part of this. If you have done theoretically or computer simulations and you know that this receptor is definitely having good binding affinity for this ligand is having good binding affinity for a particular receptor, the chances of preclinical success will be there.
Yes. And it will, I think, help us to scrutinize the actives also, right? This approach.
This will be, I'm sorry.
Narrow down the molecules, the bioactives.
Yes, definitely. If we are having long list of molecules, earlier, ma'am, what was happening? The chemists were synthesizing molecules, a lot of molecules, and pharmacologists were going to test them, all of them. That is a very laborious job, you know. Once we accumulated a lot of knowledge, like I told you, Lipinski's rule and other things, then we start filtering the molecules. Okay, we first start filtering the molecules of synthesized molecules. Okay, later on we stop synthesis also. We are only synthesizing those molecules which are really going to fit in the receptor. Okay, with high probability, we are synthesizing only those molecules. So this is how the things improve. This is how we are, when we are becoming more and more knowledgeable, we are committing less mistakes. So this is what is AI also, or big data. So now we are having long experience now. So this long experience, you know, makes us a little more wiser. We are doing certain things in a wiser way. We are wasting less things. Okay, we are making use of the available resources. So these things are with us.
Yes, very true. I'll just check whether anybody is interested in interacting with you.
Yeah, please.
Using microphone, if somebody has a hand.
So half an hour to you.
Yeah. If anybody is interested to talk with Sir, interact with him, you can raise your hand. We will offer a mic. So there is one question by Vaibhavi Peshattiwar.
Yes.
Can you suggest any references or sources for studying network pharmacology? Actually, even I wanted to ask this, that if we have to venture into it.
I can share you some papers, research papers, which you can even circulate on network pharmacology.
Okay.
Share. If you will search, you will find number of studies are there. Now you see, most of the Chinese medicine plants, they are undergoing the network pharmacology approach for finding their mechanism of action. You will find about 100 of paper on that. Not a single one, 100 of papers on that. We are lacking this in India. I think we should also establish a consortium where we should start working on gathering the phytochemical information in one database. Ayush portal is having some information. We are extracting that information. But we have to augment that information. All phytochemists or pharmacognosy people, if they are finding new molecules, they should register the phytochemical that becomes possible. That will be a good source for Indian medicinal plants, which is not yet available. It's not yet available. There should be a free, you can say, portal for Indian scientists. Those can assess that. Okay, that's one thing we can do. And then we can definitely work on mechanisms. We can definitely work on the mechanisms, because if we want to more acceptability of our herbal medicine, we need to know mechanism is one of the things. Where WHO and other people they stress a lot that you are not having the exact mechanism known to you how it is going to act. So if we know that, then standardization of the molecule in these medicines, that is another issue, and reproducibility of the medicinal effect. These things can be answered if we can use this approach on Indian medicinal plants a lot more. So I think all of us should make a consortium and we can interact with the huge ministry and those people, and that we can do a lot for Indian medicinal plants if we can start developing these things. So our research efforts will be, what we say, fruitful at the end of the day. Now what we are doing, I am doing something, you are doing something, the other ones are doing something, we are not able to collate that information. Unless until Indian researchers will not collate the information at one platform, and that should be confidential to Indian, you can say, researchers only, Indian researchers can access only, that can be possible. And this will be a very, very big step towards the realization of our Indian medicine group.
Very good strategy, actually, you have explained. The systematic, we had one session on the research management. Maybe this is one of the,
Yeah, because
initiative.
whatever we are doing, that is going waste. That is going waste. Either we are coming up with a petty publication which is not referred, you can say, for years, and that is lost in the literature. And now, big thing is that I stopped publishing most of the things. I publish only few papers a year because you should publish. You should not bring garbage to the literature. You should add to literature, but that should be very, very useful to the society. If it is not, then there's no need to publish. Why we are adding so many publications? And I have seen that those publications are even not conclusive. They are not having a conclusion. So you can say they are not communicating a conclusion to us. Okay, this can be there. So everything ends with may. As we know, we are also writing publication. So this may be this may be this. So why don't we have a consortium where we can definitely say that this is possible? Because 10 labs are working on this, and all of the 10 labs have found concordantly that this is there. Then we can surely say that this is there. So this has to be there. Common data elements we have to design for the research, and we have to have randomized multi-central controlled studies for preclinical studies. That has to be there. If this is there, then the things will be very, very good.
Yes, very sure. Utility value needs to be assessed.
That has to be there.
There is a question by Hina Bhojwani. What do you think about implications of network pharmacology with present SARS-CoV-2 pandemic? She is also a faculty of our college.
So there are studies on that. You see, network pharmacology is basically if you know the target, then there's not a problem. And if you have to make multiple targets revealed in that particular genome, then there's a problem. Then you have to use network pharmacology. But there are studies on network pharmacology which we have. I think even I have to share something in my laptop only. I'll see if I can tell you with COVID. We had one discussion on that. In this one, we have talked about how to manage COVID infection through network pharmacology. Uh, Now, can I share the screen for a few 2-3 minutes?
Sir, yes, sir, you can share. It is that function is available to you.
So, I hope you will be able to see my screen now.
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
This is a discussion which we made earlier when the COVID was at its peak. So everyone was talking about COVID. So we thought, but network pharmacology and network analysis can do it. So if you see SARS-CoV-2 is an enveloped protein, which we know, everyone know about this. So we are targeting the spike protein most of the time, which is changing a lot due to mutations. And this is the MS analysis of SARS-CoV-2 human protein interactions. This is how there are 32 human proteins which were interacting with SARS-CoV-2. Okay, so this data was useful for understanding how we can prevent, like Go and PFAM enrichments we have found, tissue expression we have found. Like I was talking about Go function, we can talk about what is the function of that gene which is interacting with it, and how it is going to affect the physiology of the human being in which it is entering. So these are the different, you see, I cannot elaborate much on this. You can see these are the different targets which were changed with the COVID infection. So these are the different SARS-CoV-2 protein-protein interaction networks which were prepared. Based on that, the information was generated. These are the pharmacological targets which were generated from that information. You can see the different targets are there. So if you can target these, if you can design molecules for these targets, we can prevent or we can treat the COVID, what we say, patients fast. So this was what we can say we have worked on COVID for a little bit of time. So you can do for anything. You can do for anything. Because here what we have seen the USP was that when the infection is there, virus enters the body, then that virus is going to interact with our proteins. So those proteins, how those proteins are interacting with our proteins, and how they are changing the workflow or the signaling of those proteins, human proteins, and how they are making us disease.
It's 1 o'clock.
If that is understood, definitely then we can have different stop points where we can target and we can make the COVID infection, you can say, nullified or treat. That we can do. So there are different approaches we can use, and we can use this approach for different things. Two case studies I've told you, like medicinal plants, we can use how they can, their information and gene information. We can combine that information and we can find the mechanism of action as well as new targets for it. So that's all from my side. Any other questions you can have, we can talk.
Yeah, so there is a Dr. Rajni Atole. She's a professor in pharmaceutics in K.M. Kundani College of Pharmacy, and she wants to interact with you. I have offered a microphone to her.
Okay, please.
It's a nice talk. I am a formulation scientist. I would like to know the use of network pharmacology tool basically to analyze the age-related disease factor. Is it feasible?
Age-related disease factors.
Yeah.
Okay, so for that you have to have a data on gene changes in gene expression with age.
Okay.
And then we can understand that which and gene interactions will be same. Protein-protein interactions will be same. The only problem will be that if a gene is not expressing much as it was expressing at the younger age, then that protein-protein interaction will be missing. And that can be in any pathway, in any biological process, that biological process can be hampered. So age-related changes will be there. So gene is nothing. Gene is, you can say, a starting point, but at the end we have a protein. If that gene expression is affected due to age or aging, then you definitely that will be affected.
Yeah, like my concern is like, if we can use this gene expression tool to understand like, the stage of the disease and if it can be controlled at an early level.
Please speak again. I was not able to.
Basically, this gene expression tool, if it can be identified, like, for example, how after 50 we go for certain, image analysis in the body. So similarly, if this gene expression tool specifically, it will help
For this, ma'am, I understand what you want to say. For this, again, we have to have a big data collection.
Okay.
Whenever we talk about prediction, the prediction is based on your seed data or your you can say test, you say
Okay, sir.
training data, how we train that, you can say algorithm. So if we know that this gene expression is going to decrease by, by the age of 60 or by the age of 50, we have to have the experimental data for that. Once we have that data, then we will add that data to and analyze that data with the algorithm, particular algorithm. And then we can say, okay, if this is the age, these genes may not be expressing well. This is the age, this gene will not be expressing well, but that is not available as far as my information is concerned as of now. But definitely, this is a good idea. This idea can be, you can say, taken to realization. For that, you have to collect the information about the gene expression. At you see, this can be added. That if you know that age is one factor, age is one factor, then sex is another factor. Okay.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
ethnicity is another factor. Most of the economic studies which we are carrying out, they are based on ethnicity.
Yes.
Okay. You can have the same study in your area. I can have the same study in my area. There's no objection to it because the population ethnicity is different. Social
Yes.
communities may be different. Okay. Environment is different. So we can talk about that. Okay. So
Yes.
population becomes different. So those factors can also be added to this, you can say, development of the idea. But how, like Maharashtrians are better than Punjabis in some form. How they're
Sir,
expressing
yeah,
better than.
actually, I'm
Okay.
sorry. And my concern is basically, if you will see
Yes.
nowadays age, my concern is, sir, basically, if you will see the age of the person has been increased, right, because of
Yes.
medical devices, and you will see the age-related diseases, specifically dementia and other problems have increased drastically. It is not with respect to any community or anything. So, like, my concern is if we can analyze that at the early stage and, like, prevention is better than cure. So, sir, I will write it to you regarding this, how we can work together. I will write to you.
Okay. One more thing is that I would like to add in Pune, there's a wellness center, wellness center.
Okay, okay.
Uh, he's a retired doctor, physician. I
Yeah.
listened once. He has developed, according to what you are saying, health positioning system. Like GPS, he's talking about HPS, health positioning system. In that, he's talking about at this age, you will have this problem. At this age,
Okay.
you have this problem. So that can be directly linked to change in gene expression. Okay, like your knees will start troubling you at this age. Okay, you can have essential hypertension at this age, or you can have starting to loss of memory at this particular age. Okay, so these are the events he has mapped in the age. So if you can consult him, I think that's another thing you can do. Well, he is having his lecture on, we say, YouTube also. You can search him.
Okay. Sir, will you please repeat the name of the scientist?
I have to search, ma'am. I have forgotten that. But if you will contact, I'll definitely give it to you.
Yeah,
But
I will write it to you, sir. Yeah, I will contact it,
uh,
details from madam, and I will write it. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Excellent.
so that way, he's good.
You have been so much resourceful and you're sharing so many things which will surely help our participants to explore in their research area and they can apply it in their, research.
So knowledge is for sharing, ma'am. We should share as much as we know so that others can benefit if we cannot.
And that's the aim of this Atal, faculty training program.
So
So,
If somebody wants to add to my knowledge also, I'm happy for that also. And if I can do something different, what I'm doing, how can I add value to this? That is also welcome. Because we can learn from each other. That is the thing.
Yes.
Somebody raised her hand, I think. I don't know.
I'll just check, sir. I'll just check. Yeah, I'll give her. Miss Vaibhavi Nitin. Ma'am, please, your mic is offered. Please mention your college and your designation, and you can ask the question. Vaibhavi, madam, the mic is offered to you.
Madam, actually I tried to unmute, but that time it could not work. Now I could unmute just now. Okay, good afternoon, sir. Myself, Vaibhavi Garge. I am working as an assistant professor in pharmacology at Bharatiya Vidyapeeth College of Pharmacy in Navi Mumbai. And first of all, thank you so much for such an enlightening session on network pharmacology. So my first question is, what is the approximate cost of purchasing a particular database for network pharmacology?
Any database.
Okay.
These databases are freely available. You can access them.
Yes. Okay. Okay. And second question is whether this concept can be applied to the drug discovery related to antimicrobial agents?
Surely. Can be. Because again, you have to see, now in that case, you have to see the genome of microbe.
Yeah,
As we
because
have, in case of COVID, you can see SARS,
okay.
SARS virus, you can see that.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir. That's all from my side.
Welcome. So if there's no questions, should we end the session, ma'am?
Yeah, I'll just check again, once again in the chat box.
Check.
Sir, you have explained us so nicely, and you have also shared with us so many links, and I'm sure that it will be a motivation to all the researchers in pharmacology to follow you. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of queries after this session also, and they are going to ask me your contact details for that. I'll be, if with your permission, if you allow.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, then I'll surely share with them. Thanks a lot. It showed that such a hardcore researcher you are. You didn't give up. You made the session despite of so many difficulties you had, and I'm really thankful for that to you, sir. And it teaches us also that never to give up and continue your task and end it successfully. Thanks a lot, sir, for being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insight on network pharmacology tools for new drug discovery. This session clearly demonstrates how big challenge this online teaching for all the faculty, and how we are developing through it is indeed a real faculty development program for us. I would like to thank you again, sir, and Rinal ma'am, and all the audience for being patient and attending all the sessions. We are winding up with the morning session. We will have a lunch break from 1:15 to 2:15. I request you all to please fill the attendance link. It has been shared with all of you. And join sharp at 2:15. We are on time and we will continue to do so. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye.